It's time for the final part of Day 9 Daily number 502, where we learn why LiquidNonY is a bitter gamer. He's doing amazing stuff with the Mothership core. Recalls, purifies, aggression, defense, really slick stuff. In this last part, we're going to do something that was a little bit unpredicted. I had another game between nonY and TT1 that doesn't quite have as much flair around the Mothership. It's not like we're seeing great recalls and purifying offense and PvP or something like that. But it's still a solid example of what the Mothership core will let us do. So let's hop in. And this game is very long, so we're going to kind of bastardize it and do it quickly. Yay! Bonus game content! LiquidNonY in the bottom right and the top left. Root TT1. Both are going to be doing kind of a similar structured build. What we're going to be seeing TT1 do is he takes both geysers early on, and then he goes mainly Sentry, Mothership, and expands off one gate. Tyler's going to do the same thing, except it's a little bit more Stalker focused, which will of course give nonY some extra vision. So, let's just go ahead and watch the Tyler cam, or the nonY cam. God, that's going to screw me over so many times. So we see Stalker, Mothership core, back to probe production. And very fast robo facility. Same story is going to be coming out of TT1, who's going to be going Sentry, and then an expand. Both players are kind of relying on the fact that the Mothership core is such a good defensive unit with that Purifier Beam that they can defend whatever they need to. We see TT1 leaves this Mothership core. If you just look at this flyer helper, you can see it right there. This is where the Mothership core is located, so that means that if Stalkers come in, we can safely sit here and shoot to about this range. Actually, probably a little longer, probably about that, right to the cusp of this vision range. And just float to the high ground for safety. Tyler does a really weird play. He goes one gate, straight Observer, and then Immortal, and continues to build Stalkers. 3 Stalkers up right now. With an Observer this fast, we're either going to run into somebody who's one-basing it and doing something aggressive, or we're going to find out real fast that our opponent expanded. So you can tell Tyler's gearing up to expand. I'll also note another kind of significant thing right around here. The fact that we are at this time, and Tyler hasn't seen any aggression, probably not a gateway-based aggression right now. So Tyler has about another minute and a half before other things would swing in, like DTs, like Blink. Blink can hit as early as 7 and 7:15, but generally most builds have it hitting closer to 7:45 or 8. So you'll actually see that Tyler has enough money, but he just needs to briefly check what's up, and when he sees, aha, a not aggressive composition, he expands, and this is really cool, instantly goes for a Robotics Bay to get Colossus. Very kick-ass. All this is possible due to this Mothership core. If for some reason he was attacking us early and we were at the top of our ramp, we have our Sentry that would have 2 force fields, and Energize would give it all the way up to 4 more force fields, so we could survive with our Stalker Immortal Force. I'll actually point that out right here. If we're getting aggressed at, we have 2 Stalkers, an Immortal, a 3rd Stalker about to pop, and Energize would give our Sentry all the energy it needs. So pretty sweet. nonY is setting himself up oh so nice. But then there's all these stretch plays that nonY's going to make. At any point in time, nonY needs to think, God, I need to get enough units to deal with an attack right now. However, he's able to identify 3 gates in a robo, so that delays things a bit. The more gateways there are, the more threatening stuff can be. Tyler pops in here again and sees a robo bay. Tyler tried to get a little bit overeager and get his forge. I shouldn't say overeager because it's actually completely correct and really clever. But upon seeing that his opponent is going Colossus as well, that also means that TT1 is going to be passive for quite some time. So, thanks to this Mothership core being part of this defense, Tyler actually goes 1 gate, 1 robo, +1, takes down the rocks, and he frickin' expands again. That is so cool. Yeah, non-stop probe production. 1 gate, 1 robo, get in range. Seems behind, but he's getting himself set up nicely. What you'll slowly notice about when you watch Tyler play is that he's ahead in very particular ways, 2 Colossus to 1. He has overall fewer ground units, but that's just because TT1 has a lot of Zealots, and that's really the only lead that he has. Sentry counts are effectively the same, just due to the fact that Energize means that we can max out the energy on these sentries at any point in time, and with the superior Colossus count, we're in good shape. Also, Tyler has the lead on upgrades by a good margin. So triple expand. And again, Tyler takes kind of a huge risk. You'd think, but makes reasonable sense. This is about as far I would stretch, is getting a Twilight Council for +2. But then I'd very rapidly start making some damn gateways. It looks like TT1 has a similar structure coming up to his build. TT1's play is a little bit more, at least it makes a little bit more sense to me because we have these 3 gates. But I'll be honest, I'm less a fan of getting the extra robos and massing up on Colossus, and much more a fan of getting up a faster Twilight with faster +2 and Archons. I'd rather have like 4 Colossus and 2 Archons than 6 Colossus. This is another cool thing where Tyler's able to use this defensive angle here, where you'd think that if your opponent walked in and you were underprepared, you'd be screwed, but Tyler shows multiple times this game that you can swing down with plenty of time. At this point, I will note, I don't have any more analysis regarding the Mothership for this game. So we're just going to let it play out. I'm actually just going to undo this and do it at ×4, and occasionally back it down to ×2. Just because it's sweet. Tyler's low on gateways still, but getting the Twilight Council. Doing great on the probe production, 72 probes. Actually has just lost the Colossus lead, even though his opponent's building stuff 2 at a time. And then look at this, baby. Stargate action. Yes, Now, when I was looking at this, I was going, oh yeah, he's doing a really early preparation to get a Mothership. And again, notice that with these angles, you're pretty much in good shape. Some pretty good control by Tyler. But instead, Tyler goes Tempest. Yeah. Yes, and with some excellent control, there's just the sickest control that comes up here. Oh, maybe it wasn't here. Maybe it wasn't even in this game. There was a game with really nice control. Oh wait, that's right, it wasn't this one. But yeah, Tyler going triple Stargate Tempest. What? 6 Spartan, aka TT1, has himself the Colossus Archon mix that just won't quit. And here's where the lulls happen. Yeah. Target firing, picking off 2 Archons right off the bat. Plus 55 damage versus massive, doing dem bonus damages to dem Colossus. And Archons being massive also take bonus damage from Tempest. You can almost 3-shot it. And this is kind of funny because 6 Spartan ends up in the situation that so many Protosses end up in, where they have dominated in the Colossus front and win. But here you actually don't win because the Tempests are flying and can actually shoot down in reasonable numbers. So Tyler decides he's had enough of that and he's going to build some carriers. Yeah. I like TT1's position a little bit more. I like being the player who has the more aggressive, more mobile army. But what Noni's doing is undeniably more kick-ass. Again, we see for the umpteenth time in this game that This is an incredibly solid defensive position. And Noni's just kind of expanding because he can. Because he's good at keeping his money low and his opponent on the ropes. With this hypermobile army, as long as TT1 is just spotting, he's going to be in really easy shape to be able to deal with this. And I almost feel like, woo. Look at that, picking off them Colossuses. Dem Coloxen, de Colossi. I prefer an army that's planted somewhere here for TT1 instead of planted somewhere in the middle of the map. Because counterattacking is really the way to deal with a force like this. In the Units tab, we have this sort of hilarious situation where even though they're kind of even, it's Tempest, Colossus, Carrier, Mothership for Noni. And then like Zealots and Stalkers and Archons and Colossus. If you actually come to the, if you hit that A button, you'll notice that they're pretty even in terms of compositional cost, which is kind of funny to me. But look at all these great counterattacks. And uh-oh, the carriers have arrived. No problem. Just recall out of there. Also lulls at Noni with the delay. Pretty cool game, right? More carrier. And TT1 continues to do the smart thing, just recalls out every time. Decides to start going air himself. The farther that Noni gets on the map, the more TT1's just going to favor these counterattacking, and the stronger they're going to be. Noni takes a base, Spartan takes a base. And even though Tyler was able to, excuse me, Noni was able to kill off one base, he's going to lose two. 3 bases. Look at TT1 splitting his units up brilliantly. This is a real struggle with any army that's strong but slow. Suddenly, 6 Spartan is in a position where he killed 3 base, lost 1, but might lose his main base anyways. Carriers mid-map, get isolated. And even though TT1 has Das Bigger Army. How much energy is on the Mothership core? Uh-oh. Still 40 seconds out from the recall. Blank forwards don't really do it. And TT1 claiming he thought he was ahead, figured he couldn't lose. This is kind of common in the early phase of a beta when you're like, well, I just didn't know that Tempest were that good. I didn't know you could really get carriers in that kind of number in this matchup. And I'll be honest, I like what TT1's doing better than Tyler. Not in terms of good or bad, but in terms of my style. I like being the one with the faster army and the more aggressive army. And as our bonus game comes to an end, I'd like to once again say that now's the time to begin asking questions. Tyler steps forward. Tyler has no main base, but he did manage to land a recall, get a lull, and the win. Wasn't that cool? It's really cool. So, let's take some questions. Markiochoa. I would love your question grabber, so I've opened it. Oh, yes. I'm really upset because my friend Tristan lives by Sprinkles Cupcakes. I don't know if you've ever had a Sprinkles Cupcakes. Those are the most amazing things in the universe. I love them so much. And he's telling me right now that he's eating them. So here's a reasonable question from Troll Dog, who says, Day 9, what happens if you lose your Mothership mid-game? In this particular circumstance, I think that it doesn't really have as big an impact because you needed it in the early to early mid-game, so that way you could have Purify and Energize, but with something that takes about as long as a probe to build and is a little bit more costly than a probe to build, you just rebuild your Mothership, and it's not really a big deal. You're going to have to be passive every time it loses because you can't do the recall. But in the mid and late game, Purify is not going to be as much a tipping hand as in the early game. So, I don't think it's as big a deal to lose it in the mid and late game, and maybe players will start even doing things like say, well, my defense is done. Time for me to send this all the way to the other side of the map and maybe try to recall over to there. Yeah. Next question from Athire5. Dear Day 9, as a Zerg player, how do I deal with these Protoss early pokes when he just mass recalls away? I would say that there's probably... How do we state that? I'm thinking that what I've witnessed thus far is... Let's pretend that we're doing a normal Wings of Liberty style game. Protoss early expands with a Forge. Zerg triple expands at the start of the game and plays that out pretty normally. I would say that it eliminates the situation where the Protoss tries to attack and just instantly loses in a dumb way. It doesn't... I don't think it'll have as much impact in that circumstance on the Zerg's build orders. You still build up a huge Ling Roach army to defend those early pressures. And then, when he recalls back home, you can just sort of put early Ling Roach pressure on him. I haven't said the core underlying thing, so let me just do that. For all the aggression that Protosses are going to have to do, they'll have to be building a lot of units in order to make the attack effective at all. I want to think about something like... let's take the build that Creator Prime does in Wings of Liberty. He goes for a 4-gate Sentry Immortal, and then he takes a third while getting Blink Stalker and +2. He then adds on 2 more gateways and just pretty much makes Stalkers. And then he adds on 4 more gateways and a Dark Shrine and builds a whole bunch of Stalkers in that period as well. So go through all those segments with me. In the Immortal Sentry phase, where he's taking himself a 3rd base, if you as the Zerg, or if he tries to move out, he's going to have to build more than just sentries and immortals for it to be really any effective, because you just surround it with Zerglings and do some damage. I mean, keep in mind, while the recall's happening, you can still take damage on the sentries. So if he were to want to do damage in that spot, he'd have to build a bunch more Stalkers, which would delay his 3rd. All these things that in the normal ways that Protoss play, if you start trying to be aggressive and throw in these recalls, sure, it can be cute, but often you disrupt other elements of the build. So whenever you see a Protoss player attack, do no damage, and recall, the Protoss has actually lost a good bit of money in that whole exchange. The only circumstance is in some of these newer plays where Protosses are not early expanding. They're going 1 gate and then expanding, which I guess is still kind of early. And that I wouldn't describe as better for Protoss or worse for Zerg. It's just another new set of possibilities. At this point in time, it feels pretty reasonable. I do think that maybe recall could be bumped up to like 125 energy, and I would still be like, oh my god, this is so great. 150 felt kind of high. There was like an attack timing you could do, but we're seeing Tyler be able to do like multi-pronged attack timings and recall you, and I think that that's also quite cool. But as Zergs, I'd just say don't get too worked up. Try to just do the usual thing. You know, it's like, how do Zergs deal with Hellions if you can't surround it and catch it? You still just play defensive, you just kind of play careful. Last question from Nikeatinismo. Day 9. Tempest carrier Mothership is kick-ass. Do you see Protoss Air as a viable strat in the way mech is an alternative to Bio for Terran? I mean, probably. It looks good. It's just hard to get there, and I think that it's kind of cool the way that Tyler was able to get there, and I actually think the Tempests were used very reasonably. Oh, well, I need some way to get carriers. I have to stay defensive. I can't just start building the carriers because I'll lose to a timing push. So let me get the Tempest up, which have range 15 and do bonus damage to massive. That way I can deal with your Colossus push. I say probably, but it wouldn't happen unless you're at 3 or 4 bases. It's a boring answer, but that's my answer. Time for me to eat dinner. Tomorrow I'm going to be doing a live ladder session and just sort of analyzing my own games. And hope you come by and watch. See you on Sunday for subscriber mono battles, Monday for Fun Day Monday, and what was the other one? I don't know. Huge thanks to LiquidNony. Follow him on Twitter at LiquidNony, N-O-N-Y, or on twitch.tv/LiquidNony. Bye guys. Woohoo! Do 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 do.